Let's talk about weakness in a more direct and personal way. Do you remember the final scene in The Death of Stalin, where the head of the secret police, Beria, is executed for his crimes? Around his lifeless body, the highest ranking officials of the Soviet regime stand, including Malenkov, the interim leader, who reluctantly agrees to the decision. Then, Khrushchev, now the new leader, turns to Kaganovich and asks a question that hangs in the air. Can one trust a weak man? Kaganovich responds without hesitation, have you ever trusted a weak man? That phrase has always moved me. We have this view that weakness is something neutral, that there are weak people with good hearts, just as there are strong people who don't always act ethically. But the film presents a different perspective. Weakness is shown as something limiting, almost incapable of inspiring trust. And when you stop to think about it, it's clear how often, in many situations, weakness can indeed hold us back and prevent us from moving forward. I decided to bring up this topic because today we're going to face head-on what it means to be weak and understand why this so deeply troubled the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche didn't see weakness as a characteristic that can be simply ignored or considered neutral. For him, weakness had a dangerous facet, an inability to be honest with oneself and with the world around us. And this is where his reflections begin to make sense for us today. Get ready for a new perspective on strength and weakness, a view that might change the way you see your own choices and even your relationships. We're going to explore why, for Nietzsche, weakness goes hand in hand with unhappiness, why true goodness can only emerge from strength, and how honesty is the key to all of this. It's important to remember that this is just a fragment of Nietzsche's thoughts on weakness. What I'm sharing here are aspects that resonate in our current context and that can open your mind to a deeper reflection. And it all begins with Nietzsche's fundamental notion that weakness, at its core, is a form of dishonesty. Now let's travel to another story, one with a more melancholic tone. In one of Dostoevsky's short stories, the protagonist falls hopelessly in love with a young woman named Nastenka. They spend several nights together, talking about life, and she opens her heart to him, confessing that she's in love with another man, someone she believes has abandoned her. Over time, Nastenka seems to grow fond of our narrator, to the point of considering staying with him. But in the last moment, her old lover reappears, and she runs to him, leaving our protagonist alone and devastated. What's interesting here is how the narrator tries to convince himself that he's at peace with the situation. He tells himself that at least she is happy now. But deep down, there's still an unresolved desire and pain. This story clearly illustrates what Nietzsche means by weakness and the dishonesty that comes with it. It's not about lacking physical strength or being insecure. It's about being unable to be honest with one's own feelings, even when it hurts. This view of Nietzsche on weakness and dishonesty permeates much of his work, especially Thus Spoke Zarathustra and Beyond Good and Evil. For him, true weakness is not being able to act in accordance with one's own will, allowing circumstances and unfulfilled desires to control one's life. From this, the invitation is to reflect on how often we pretend to be okay when, in reality, we want to scream to the world what we feel. And more importantly, how can we overcome that weakness that binds us and learn to be honest, strong, and true to ourselves? Keep in mind that Nietzsche addresses weakness in many different contexts, and this is one of the most common. The weakness of those who cannot act from their true will and instead live in contradiction with their own feelings and desires. Nietzsche's concept of weakness is deeply connected to a kind of self-deception, a refusal to confront the truth about ourselves, even when we know it's uncomfortable. This type of dishonesty doesn't just affect us on a personal level. It influences how we interact with the world and with others. When we are not honest with ourselves, we lose our authenticity, and in the process, we lose our strength. Nietzsche's view is clear. True power comes from the courage to be honest, even when it means confronting painful truths. Now let's take a moment to reflect. How often do we act in ways that contradict our true feelings? How often do we compromise, choosing to pretend we're okay when we're not? In doing so, we make ourselves weaker, not just in the eyes of others, but in our own eyes. We give away our own sense of self-control. Nietzsche believed that to live authentically, we must face the discomfort of being honest, even when it hurts. This might mean acknowledging our vulnerabilities, our fears, and our desires that we often try to suppress. This leads us to another critical idea in Nietzsche's philosophy, the concept of will to power. According to Nietzsche, every human being has an inherent drive to overcome obstacles and assert their own power in the world. But this power doesn't come from external sources. It comes from within. When we allow ourselves to be weak and dishonest, we give up our will to power and instead become passive participants in our own lives. True strength for Nietzsche is not the ability to dominate others or to impose our will over the world. It is the ability to master ourselves, to act in alignment with our deepest values and desires, even when those choices are difficult or unpopular. This is why he believes that only the strong can truly be good. The strong are not those who dominate or control others. They are the ones who are capable of creating meaning and values from within themselves, rather than relying on external rules or expectations. In Nietzsche's view, weakness is not simply an absence of strength. It is a kind of moral and existential failure. It is the failure to live in accordance with one's own will, to accept one's own responsibility for shaping one's life. And perhaps most importantly, it is the failure to be honest with oneself. Think about it this way. How often do we find ourselves blaming external circumstances for our unhappiness or lack of progress? How often do we wait for someone else to give us permission to act, or for life to change in a way that suits us? Nietzsche would argue that this is a form of weakness, the refusal to take responsibility for our own lives. The true challenge is to face the discomfort of honesty and to embrace the responsibility of creating our own path forward. Nietzsche's philosophy does not offer an easy way out. It demands hard work, self-reflection, and a willingness to confront the truths we would rather avoid. But in return, it offers a path toward freedom. Freedom from the chains of dishonesty, from the weakness of living in denial. It offers the possibility of living a life that is truly our own, not dictated by the fears, expectations, or insecurities of others. So how do we begin to break free from this weakness? How do we start to live more honestly and authentically? First, it starts with self-awareness. We need to ask ourselves difficult questions. What do I truly want? What am I afraid of? What am I pretending not to feel? These are uncomfortable questions, but they are necessary if we want to move towards strength and authenticity. We must learn to trust ourselves, to listen to the quiet voice inside us that knows what is true, even if it doesn't always match what we've been told is acceptable or right. Second, we must take action. It's not enough to know what we want or to understand our weaknesses. We must begin to make choices that align with our true selves. This might mean making hard decisions, cutting ties with people or situations that do not support our growth, or confronting aspects of ourselves that we've been avoiding. But it is only through action that we can begin to build the strength Nietzsche speaks of. Lastly, we must embrace discomfort. Honesty, especially radical honesty, is often painful. It can lead to moments of vulnerability, rejection, or even isolation. But these moments are essential for our growth. To live authentically, we must be willing to face the discomfort of being true to ourselves, no matter the external consequences. Nietzsche's vision of strength is not about being invulnerable or without flaws. It's about owning our imperfections and our weaknesses and using them as the foundation for growth. It's about taking responsibility for our lives and living in a way that is true to who we are, rather than who society or others want us to be. In the end, Nietzsche's challenge to us is simple yet profound. Do not settle for a life of weakness, a life of dishonesty, a life of conformity. Instead, choose the difficult path of strength, the path of living authentically, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it means facing things you'd rather avoid. Only then can we begin to truly create meaning in our lives and experience the fullness of human potential. The idea that true strength comes from embracing our vulnerability and being honest with ourselves leads us to another significant aspect of Nietzsche's philosophy, the Übermensch, or overman. The Übermensch represents the ideal of human potential, someone who has transcended the limitations of conventional morality, societal expectations, and importantly, their own weaknesses. This figure is not simply strong in the conventional sense. They are strong because they are free. Free from fear, free from the constraints of traditional values, and free from the need for external validation. But what does it mean to become an Übermensch in our own lives? It's not about striving for some mythical perfection, but about continuously overcoming ourselves, our fears, our limitations, our internal contradictions. Nietzsche did not believe in a final destination. Rather, the process of becoming, of evolving into a higher version of ourselves, is what gives life its meaning. One of the key components of this transformation is the concept of amor fati, or the love of one's fate. Nietzsche argued that the strongest individuals are those who learn to embrace their entire existence, including the hardships, setbacks, and failures. Instead of wishing that life were different, they learn to say yes to everything that happens to them, to accept their challenges as opportunities for growth. This doesn't mean passively resigning to suffering, but rather actively choosing to find meaning in it, to use it as fuel for self-overcoming. Amor fati calls us to a radical acceptance of our lives as they are, including the pain and imperfections. It asks us to see life as a series of opportunities to grow stronger, to refine our character, and to develop a deeper understanding of ourselves. It is a rejection of victimhood and a recognition that our strength comes from our ability to shape meaning, even in the face of adversity. When we begin to internalize this philosophy, we start to see life in a new light. Instead of viewing our weaknesses as flaws that need to be hidden or overcome, we begin to see them as part of our journey. We learn to approach challenges not with fear or resistance, but with a sense of curiosity and determination. How can we grow from this? What can we learn? These are the questions that guide the Übermensch, the person who has learned to embrace their fate and find power in it. And this is where Nietzsche's notion of the will to power becomes even more relevant. The will to power is not about domination, but about the will to expand, to grow, and to affirm life in all its complexity. It is the inner drive to assert one's individuality, to create one's own values, and to push past limitations. This is the true source of strength that Nietzsche is advocating for, a dynamic force within us that drives us toward greatness, not in the eyes of others, but in our own eyes. But here's the key. To tap into this will to power, we must first confront our weaknesses. We must face the lies we tell ourselves and the ways in which we suppress our true desires and values. Only then can we access the deeper, more authentic strength that lies beneath. Only then can we begin to harness the power within us to create the life we want, rather than one shaped by fear, avoidance, or conformity. Nietzsche's philosophy asks us to ask ourselves some of the hardest questions. Are we living authentically? Are we being honest with ourselves? Are we actively shaping our lives, or are we letting circumstances and external pressures define us? The answers to these questions will determine the level of power we are able to access in our lives. The transition from weakness to strength is not instantaneous. It's a lifelong process, but it is a process that can bring profound transformation. It requires patience, introspection, and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths. It also requires a commitment to continually push ourselves, even when the path ahead is unclear, or when the weight of the world seems overwhelming. In a world that often prizes convenience, comfort, and conformity, Nietzsche's call for strength through honesty, self-overcoming, and the love of one's fate is a radical one. It asks us to step away from the crowd and to become the creators of our own destinies. It challenges us to become individuals who are not afraid to face the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, and to use that truth to propel us forward. So, as we wrap up this discussion, I want to leave you with this question. What part of your life are you not being honest with yourself about? Where are you holding back, pretending to be something you're not? Where do you feel weak or trapped? And what is it that keeps you there? The journey to overcoming weakness begins with the courage to look inward and confront these questions. It is not an easy path, but it is the path that leads to real strength, freedom, and authenticity. It's the path of the Übermensch, the path of becoming more than you were yesterday. And it is a journey worth taking. Now let's talk about how we can actively implement these ideas in our daily lives. Nietzsche's vision is not just theoretical. It's something that calls for action, for personal transformation. If we truly want to rise above weakness and cultivate strength, we need to make conscious choices that reflect our commitment to honesty, self-overcoming, and the love of fate. It's not about waiting for the right moment. It's about creating the right moment with every decision we make. Quo of our own lives. Often we live on autopilot, reacting to external pressures, following societal norms, and conforming to expectations. Nietzsche would ask, are you living your life for yourself, or are you living it for others? This question can be uncomfortable, but it's essential for self-examination. To truly start overcoming weakness, you need to break free from these external constraints. You need to ask yourself, what do I really want? What does success look like on my terms? And not just the superficial material successes, but what does it mean to live a meaningful, authentic life? These questions will challenge you to reflect deeply and to step outside of the societal box you might have confined yourself to. Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch is not a rigid standard to reach. Rather, it's an invitation to create your own values, to live in a way that reflects your truest desires and inner convictions. It's about rejecting the false dichotomy of good and evil as defined by others, and embracing your own path, even if it means standing alone at times. Another crucial aspect of Nietzsche's philosophy is the idea of eternal recurrence. In his work, Nietzsche proposes the thought experiment. What if you had to live your life over and over again, in exactly the same way, for eternity? How would this change the way you approach your life? Would you continue living the way you do, or would you make different choices? This thought experiment forces us to reflect on our current lives. If we knew we were going to live the same life over and over, would we regret the way we've spent our time? Would we wish we had made braver decisions, faced our fears more courageously, and pursued our true desires? Nietzsche challenges us to live in such a way that we would welcome the idea of eternal recurrence, that we would be proud to live the same life again and again. This brings us to another important concept in Nietzsche's philosophy, the rejection of nihilism. Nihilism is the belief that life has no inherent meaning, and it's a mindset that can paralyze us into inaction, because if nothing matters, why bother trying? But Nietzsche was a fierce opponent of nihilism. He believed that meaning is not something that is given to us from the outside, but something we must create for ourselves. This is why Nietzsche places such emphasis on strength, honesty, and self-overcoming. The strongest individuals are the ones who refuse to succumb to nihilism. Instead, they take ownership of their lives, define their own meaning, and create their own values. They take the raw material of existence, with all its suffering and challenges, and use it to create something beautiful, meaningful, and uniquely their own. This philosophy asks us to take responsibility for our lives, for our happiness, and for the world we want to create. It asks us to stop waiting for someone or something to give us purpose, and instead to create that purpose ourselves. So, how do we begin? The first step is to look at the areas of our lives where we are weak, where we are not being honest with ourselves, and where we have allowed fear or insecurity to dictate our choices. We need to face these weaknesses directly and ask ourselves, how can I grow from this? What can I learn from my weaknesses? From here, we must make a conscious effort to act in ways that align with our true values, even when it's difficult. We must embrace discomfort and challenge, recognizing that growth often comes from pushing through adversity. We must be courageous enough to choose authenticity over convenience, to choose strength over weakness, and to choose freedom over conformity. The journey to strength, to the Übermensch, is a lifelong process. It requires us to be constantly self-reflective, to question our assumptions, and to challenge the narratives we have inherited from society. It requires us to embrace the uncertainty of life and to trust that through our efforts we can create meaning, purpose, and greatness. Nietzsche's philosophy is not about achieving perfection. It's about embracing the process of becoming stronger, more honest, more authentic, and more capable of creating a life that reflects our deepest desires and values. As we conclude this reflection, I want to leave you with a thought. What does your Übermensch look like? Who do you want to become? And what steps can you take today to start moving toward that person? Nietzsche's call to action is clear. Become the creator of your own life. Overcome your weaknesses. Face your fears. And above all, live honestly and authentically. Remember, strength doesn't come from avoiding weakness. It comes from confronting it head on and using it as a stepping stone to greater power and freedom. Be the person who has the courage to look at themselves honestly, to challenge their own limitations, and to continually strive for self-overcoming. Because as Nietzsche reminds us, the only true power is the power to become who we are meant to be. Now that we've begun to understand Nietzsche's ideas, let's turn our attention to how we can practically apply his philosophy in our lives. It's one thing to discuss these concepts in abstract terms, but what does it actually look like to live according to Nietzsche's ideals? One of the most significant takeaways from Nietzsche is the importance of embracing struggle. Nietzsche's idea of the will to power is rooted in the belief that growth, strength, and self-overcoming arise from facing challenges head-on. It's not about avoiding hardship or seeking comfort. It's about finding meaning through struggle and using that struggle to refine and strengthen the self. In our modern world, we often do the opposite. We seek comfort and convenience, avoiding anything that might make us uncomfortable. But Friedrich Nietzsche, in Twilight of the Idols, makes a provocative statement. Only the weak use arguments. This assertion, especially coming from a philosopher, invites reflection. What did Nietzsche mean by this? To understand, one must explore his profound skepticism toward reason, argumentation, and their perceived overvaluation in Western thought. A skepticism rooted in his critique of Socrates. For Nietzsche, Socrates was not the savior of philosophy, but its corrupter. He accused Socrates of initiating the tyranny of reason, a cultural shift that elevated logic to the sole measure of truth. This, Nietzsche argues, marked the beginning of a cultural decline, starting with Greece and extending to Western civilization as a whole. Nietzsche famously referred to Socrates as the mosquito of Athens. Socrates' relentless questioning of the Athenian elite, challenging their beliefs about justice, beauty, and morality, earned him this moniker. His dialectical method forced his interlocutors to confront the inconsistencies in their convictions, often leading them to doubt their life's foundations. However, Nietzsche viewed this as symptomatic of a deeper cultural malaise. A thriving culture does not need to justify itself through philosophy. Its vitality speaks for itself. By the time Socrates appeared, Greek culture was already in decline, and his emphasis on reason and justification exacerbated this decay. Nietzsche's critique extends beyond Socrates to the broader moral frameworks of history. He contrasts what he calls master morality and slave morality. The former, associated with the pre-Socratic Greeks, celebrates strength, vitality, and the unrestrained assertion of power. For the masters, good was synonymous with what was noble and strong, and their actions required no justification beyond their own will. In contrast, slave morality emerged from the resentment of the weak. Unable to compete with the powerful, they redefined values to favor humility, meekness, and submission. Nietzsche saw Socratic reasoning as a tool of this moral inversion, a weapon used by the weak to undermine the strong, by appealing to reason and universal principles. Nietzsche's critique of Socratic reasoning extends to art, particularly Greek tragedy. He lamented how the works of Euripides, influenced by Socrates, diluted the mystical power of traditional Greek art. Euripides prioritized intellectual clarity and rationality, stripping tragedy of its primal and instinctive energy. For Nietzsche, this shift reflected a broader cultural decline. The insistence on understanding and explaining everything, a hallmark of Socratic reasoning, robbed art of its enigmatic and transcendent qualities, reducing it to mere rational exposition. To illustrate the ethos of pre-Socratic Greece, Nietzsche points to the Melian dialogue, recounted by Thucydides during the Peloponnesian War. In this encounter, Athens demanded that the neutral island of Melos submit to its authority. When the Melians resisted, the Athenians responded with a stark assertion of power. The strong do what they can, and the weak suffer what they must. This unapologetic embrace of power epitomized the pre-Socratic Greek spirit, unencumbered by the need for moral justification. For Nietzsche, this confidence in one's own strength was lost with the rise of Socratic and later Christian values, which emphasized humility and self-denial. Nietzsche's philosophical project seeks to transcend the limitations imposed by Socratic and Christian morality. Central to this vision is the concept of the Übermensch, or overman, a figure who creates new values rooted in strength, creativity, and self-assertion. The Übermensch embodies a return to the vitality of pre-Socratic Greece, but elevates it to a new level of self-awareness. Unlike Socratic reasoning, which seeks external validation through logic and universal principles, the Übermensch draws authority from within. This figure represents Nietzsche's call to move beyond good and evil to a morality that is life-affirming, self-created, and unbound by the constraints of tradition. To deepen our understanding of Nietzsche's critique, it is essential to place his philosophy within its historical context. By examining the intellectual and cultural milieu in which Nietzsche lived, we can better grasp the motivations behind his radical ideas and their enduring relevance. Arthur Schopenhauer, a significant influence on Nietzsche, provides a crucial backdrop for his ideas. Schopenhauer's concept of the will as the fundamental driving force of existence resonated deeply with Nietzsche. However, while Schopenhauer viewed the will as a source of suffering to be overcome through renunciation, Nietzsche embraced it as a manifestation of life's creative and dynamic energy. In rejecting Schopenhauer's pessimism, Nietzsche sought to affirm life in all its complexity, celebrating the will as a force of growth and self-overcoming. This perspective underpins his critique of Socratic reasoning, which he saw as a denial of life's instinctual and chaotic nature in favor of sterile rationality. Nietzsche's critique also reflects his response to the cultural crisis of modernity. In the late 19th century, Europe was grappling with the decline of traditional religious and moral frameworks, leading to a sense of disorientation and existential angst. Nietzsche famously declared, "God is dead," capturing the profound implications of this cultural upheaval. For Nietzsche, the death of God signaled the collapse of the metaphysical foundations upon which Western civilization had been built. In this void, he saw an opportunity for humanity to create new values, but also a danger of falling into nihilism. His critique of Socratic reasoning is thus part of a broader effort to confront and overcome the challenges of modernity. To understand the full scope of Nietzsche's critique, it is essential to examine the legacy of Socratic reasoning in Western thought. From Plato's idealism to the rise of Christianity and the Enlightenment's emphasis on reason, the Socratic method has profoundly shaped the trajectory of Western philosophy. Nietzsche saw this legacy as a double-edged sword. While it had driven intellectual progress, it had also fostered a mindset that prioritized abstraction and universality over the richness of lived experience. By challenging this legacy, Nietzsche sought to reclaim a more authentic and life-affirming approach to philosophy. Nietzsche's critique of Socratic reasoning is not merely philosophical, it also delves into the psychological. He explores how the rise of reason, as championed by Socrates, impacts the human psyche and its relationship with instincts, emotions, and creativity. One of Nietzsche's central concerns is the suppression of instincts in favor of rational thought. He believed that human instincts are a source of vitality and creativity, essential for a fulfilling life. Socratic reasoning, with its emphasis on logic and justification, suppresses these instincts, leading to a disconnect between the individual and their natural impulses. For Nietzsche, this suppression creates a psychological imbalance, fostering a sense of dissatisfaction and alienation. He viewed the overemphasis on reason as a form of self-denial, preventing individuals from embracing their true nature and achieving their full potential. The psychological underpinnings of slave morality are closely tied to the concept of resentment. Nietzsche describes resentment as a deep-seated resentment harbored by the weak against the strong. Unable to assert themselves through direct action, the weak channel their frustration into moral and philosophical systems that invert traditional values. Socratic reasoning, Nietzsche argues, is a manifestation of resentment. By prioritizing logic over instinct and moralizing the actions of the powerful, it allows the weak to undermine the natural order and assert a form of symbolic revenge. In contrast to the Apollonian emphasis on order and rationality, Nietzsche celebrates the Dionysian spirit as a symbol of creativity, chaos, and the affirmation of life's unpredictability. He saw the Dionysian as a counterbalance to the sterility of Socratic reasoning, representing a return to the primal energy of pre-Socratic Greece. Through the lens of the Dionysian, Nietzsche envisions a psychological state where individuals embrace their instincts and passions, transcending the limitations imposed by reason. This state, he argues, is essential for artistic and personal growth, enabling a deeper connection with the essence of existence. Nietzsche's philosophical critique is not merely retrospective, it is forward-looking. He envisioned a future where humanity could overcome the limitations imposed by traditional morality and rationalism, embracing a new way of being rooted in strength, creativity, and self-determination. Central to Nietzsche's vision is the idea of creating new values. With the collapse of traditional frameworks, humanity faces the challenge of constructing a moral and philosophical foundation that affirms life rather than denies it. This requires individuals to take responsibility for their own values, rejecting inherited norms and embracing their role as creators. The Übermensch, or Overman, represents the embodiment of this ideal. The Übermensch does not seek external validation or adhere to universal principles. Instead, they derive meaning from within, living authentically and courageously in accordance with their own vision. A significant obstacle to Nietzsche's vision is the threat of nihilism, the belief that life lacks inherent meaning or value. With the death of God and the collapse of traditional morality, Nietzsche recognized the risk of despair and existential paralysis. However, he also saw this as an opportunity for renewal. By confronting nihilism directly, Nietzsche believed individuals could transcend it, transforming the absence of meaning into a space for creative possibility. This process requires courage, imagination, and a willingness to embrace uncertainty. For Nietzsche, art and philosophy play a vital role in shaping the future. Art, in particular, embodies the Dionysian spirit, offering a means of reconnecting with life's vitality and transcending the limitations of rational thought. Philosophy, when practiced authentically, can serve as a tool for self-discovery and the creation of new values. Nietzsche envisioned a future where these disciplines work in harmony, fostering a culture that celebrates creativity, individuality, and the affirmation of life. This vision stands in stark contrast to the sterile rationalism and moralizing tendencies of Socratic and Christian traditions. Nietzsche's influence extends far beyond the realm of philosophy, permeating literature, psychology, art, and politics. His ideas, though often controversial, continue to provoke thought and inspire debate, making his legacy both profound and enduring. One of Nietzsche's most significant contributions is his influence on existentialist thought. Philosophers such as Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, and Martin Heidegger drew heavily on Nietzsche's themes of individuality, freedom, and the creation of meaning. His critique of traditional morality and his emphasis on authenticity resonate deeply within existentialist frameworks. Nietzsche's insights into human psychology have also had a lasting impact. Sigmund Freud acknowledged Nietzsche's influence on the development of psychoanalysis, particularly in understanding the unconscious mind and the conflict between instincts and societal norms. More recently, psychologists and scholars have explored Nietzsche's ideas on resilience, self-overcoming, and the pursuit of meaning. In the realm of cultural critique, Nietzsche's analysis of modernity and its discontents remains highly relevant. His warnings about the dangers of nihilism and the loss of meaning in a secularized world continue to resonate in contemporary debates about identity, purpose, and the role of tradition in an increasingly fragmented society. Artists, writers, and filmmakers have found inspiration in Nietzsche's philosophy. From the works of Franz Kafka and Thomas Mann to contemporary cinema and visual art, Nietzsche's themes of rebellion, creativity, and the struggle for self-expression have become enduring motifs in the cultural imagination. Nietzsche's philosophy continues to resonate in the 21st century, offering insights into the challenges and opportunities of contemporary life. As we navigate an era defined by rapid technological advancement, cultural fragmentation, and existential uncertainty, Nietzsche's ideas remain profoundly relevant. In a postmodern world characterized by skepticism toward grand narratives and universal truths, Nietzsche's critique of traditional morality and metaphysics provides a valuable framework for understanding our cultural moment. His emphasis on individual creativity and the rejection of inherited values resonates with the postmodern ethos of questioning authority and embracing plurality. Nietzsche's call to create one's own values takes on new significance in an age where traditional sources of meaning, such as religion and community, are increasingly fragmented. In this context, his philosophy offers a blueprint for navigating existential challenges by embracing personal responsibility and cultivating resilience. The rapid advancement of technology poses unique ethical and existential questions that Nietzsche's philosophy can help address. The concept of the will to power provides a lens for understanding the dynamics of technological innovation, highlighting both its creative potential and its capacity for domination and control. In an era dominated by mass media and consumer culture, Nietzsche's celebration of art and the Dionysian spirit offers a counterpoint to the homogenization of culture. His philosophy inspires a return to authenticity, creativity, and the affirmation of life's inherent chaos and beauty. Nietzsche's philosophy continues to resonate in the 21st century, offering insights into the challenges and opportunities of contemporary life. As we navigate an era defined by rapid technological advancement, cultural fragmentation, and existential uncertainty, Nietzsche's ideas remain profoundly relevant. In a postmodern world characterized by skepticism toward grand narratives and universal truths, Nietzsche's critique of traditional morality and metaphysics provides a valuable framework for understanding our cultural moment. His emphasis on individual creativity and the rejection of inherited values resonates with the postmodern ethos of questioning authority and embracing plurality. And one of the key challenges in contemporary Nietzschean thought is reimagining the concept of the Übermensch for a globalized and interconnected world. In Nietzsche's time, the Übermensch represented an individual striving for self-overcoming and the creation of new values. Today, this idea can be extended to collective efforts, emphasizing collaboration and shared creativity while maintaining individual authenticity. Nietzsche's philosophy offers a lens for addressing global challenges such as climate change, inequality, and cultural polarization. His critique of traditional values and his emphasis on life-affirming creativity can inspire innovative solutions that transcend ideological divides and embrace complexity. In the realm of education, Nietzsche's ideas advocate for a system that prioritizes creativity, critical thinking, and the cultivation of individuality. By moving away from standardized approaches and fostering environments that encourage exploration and self-expression, educators can nurture the next generation of thinkers and creators. Finally, Nietzsche's philosophy invites us to consider the concept of the eternal return, the idea that life should be lived as if each moment were to be repeated infinitely. This perspective challenges us to embrace responsibility, find joy in existence, and create a life worth living. As Nietzsche's ideas continue to evolve and inspire, their impact will shape the intellectual and cultural landscape for generations to come. As the world becomes increasingly interconnected and complex, the role of Nietzsche's philosophy in shaping the modern individual's identity and purpose takes on heightened relevance. His ideas provide a framework for navigating existential challenges, fostering creativity, and embracing personal responsibility in an age of uncertainty. Modern society faces an identity crisis driven by rapid technological advancement, globalization, and the erosion of traditional values. Nietzsche's critique of inherited norms encourages individuals to confront these challenges head-on by rejecting passive conformity and taking active control of their self-definition. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch offers a vision for overcoming this crisis. By creating new values and living authentically, the Übermensch exemplifies the courage to forge a unique identity in the face of societal pressures. This idea resonates deeply in a world where individualism often clashes with collective norms. Creativity lies at the heart of Nietzsche's philosophy, serving as a means of self-expression and self-overcoming. For the modern individual, creativity is not limited to artistic endeavors, but extends to all aspects of life, including relationships, careers, and personal growth. Nietzsche's emphasis on the Dionysian spirit highlights the importance of embracing chaos, intuition, and passion as sources of inspiration. By rejecting rigid structures and embracing life's unpredictability, individuals can unlock their full creative potential and find meaning in their endeavors. With the decline of traditional authority figures, Nietzsche recognizes the burden of freedom that comes with the responsibility to create one's own values. This freedom can be both liberating and daunting, as it requires individuals to confront the existential weight of their choices. In addressing this burden, Nietzsche advocates for resilience and self-discipline. By cultivating a strong sense of purpose and embracing the challenges of autonomy, individuals can transform freedom from a source of anxiety into a foundation for empowerment. The rise of technology has fundamentally altered the human experience, introducing new possibilities and challenges. Nietzsche's philosophy offers insights into navigating this landscape by emphasizing the importance of authenticity and self-awareness in a digitally mediated world. In the age of social media and algorithm-driven content, Nietzsche's warning against herd mentality takes on renewed significance. By resisting the pressure to conform to curated norms and engaging critically with digital environments, individuals can assert their agency and maintain a sense of individuality. As traditional religious frameworks lose their influence, Nietzsche's philosophy provides a secular path to meaning and fulfillment. His call to embrace life in its entirety, including its struggles and contradictions, challenges individuals to find purpose in their own experiences, rather than seeking external validation. The eternal return, a central concept in Nietzsche's thought, invites individuals to live as if each moment were to be repeated infinitely. This perspective encourages mindfulness, gratitude, and intentionality. The abyss is one of the most evocative and enigmatic symbols in philosophy. It represents a mysterious and unfathomable void, a vast expanse where the boundaries of human understanding dissolve into the unknown. For Friedrich Nietzsche, the abyss is a crucible of transformation, a space where the sharp light of human consciousness meets the impenetrable shadows of mystery. It is both a threshold and a mirror, challenging us to confront the limits of our knowledge, the fragility of our beliefs, and the chaos within ourselves. Nietzsche's concept of the abyss is not merely a poetic metaphor. It is a profound exploration of the human condition. It encapsulates the tension between the comprehensible and the unknowable, the comforting illusions we cling to, and the stark truths we often avoid. But the abyss is more than a source of fear. It is a proving ground for the soul. Within its depths lies the potential for destruction and creation, despair and transcendence. To understand the psychology of the abyss is to embark on a journey into the heart of Nietzsche's philosophy. It is a journey into the void, where we confront not only the unknown, but also ourselves. In Nietzsche's thought, the abyss serves as a confrontation with the limits of human existence. It is where all assumptions about reality, morality, and purpose are stripped bare. Standing on the edge of the abyss forces us to confront our finitude, the undeniable fact that much of existence lies beyond our comprehension. This idea challenges the very foundations of Western thought. For centuries, humanity has sought to impose order on the chaos of the world through religion, science, and philosophy. These systems, while comforting, are ultimately human constructs, attempts to fill the void of the abyss with meaning. Nietzsche argued that these constructs, no matter how intricate, could never fully encapsulate the vastness of existence. To face the abyss is to let go of these constructs and accept the unknown. This is not an easy task. The human mind craves certainty, and the abyss offers none. Instead, it reveals the fragility of our certainties and demands that we confront the terrifying possibility that life, at its core, may lack inherent purpose. Nietzsche's famous aphorism, "And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you," encapsulates the psychological weight of this confrontation. The abyss does not simply exist as an external void. It interacts with us, reflecting our deepest fears, doubts, and insecurities. What does it mean for the abyss to gaze back? It means that the process of confronting the unknown is also a process of self-discovery. The abyss reveals not only the limits of the world, but also the limits within ourselves. It holds up a mirror to our inner chaos, exposing the unresolved tensions and contradictions that define us. This interaction is transformative but dangerous. To stare too long into the abyss without sufficient inner strength risks succumbing to despair or nihilism. Nietzsche understood this risk well, cautioning that those who lose themselves in the void may be overwhelmed by its magnitude. Nihilism, the belief that life lacks objective meaning, purpose, or value, is a central concern in Nietzsche's philosophy. He saw nihilism as both a consequence of and a response to the abyss. When traditional sources of meaning collapse, whether through the death of God or the failure of metaphysical systems, the abyss looms large, tempting us to conclude that nothing matters. For Nietzsche, nihilism was a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it represents a crisis, a state of existential despair that can paralyze individuals and societies. On the other hand, it is a necessary stage in the process of self-overcoming. Only by confronting the abyss and facing the void of nihilism can we begin to create new values and meanings. This is the essence of Nietzsche's challenge, to resist the pull of nihilism and use the abyss as a catalyst for transformation. The abyss is not a final destination, but a gateway to something greater. While the abyss is often associated with fear and despair, Nietzsche also saw it as a space of immense creative potential. By dismantling old systems of meaning, the abyss clears the way for new possibilities. It is a blank canvas on which we can paint the values and purposes that resonate with our authentic selves. This act of creation is central to Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, overman. The overman is someone who has faced the abyss, transcended nihilism, and emerged as a creator of values. They do not cling to the illusions of the past or succumb to the despair of meaninglessness. Instead, they embrace the chaos of the abyss and use it as a source of strength and inspiration. For Nietzsche, this creative process is not about imposing order on the chaos of existence, but about learning to dance with it. The overman does not seek to escape the abyss. They revel in its freedom, using it as a stage for self-expression and growth. The concept of the abyss is not confined to abstract philosophy. It manifests in everyday life. Every time we question the purpose of our existence, wrestle with uncertainty, or face moments of profound loss, we encounter the abyss. It is present in the existential crises that define the human experience. From the search for meaning in a seemingly indifferent universe to the struggle to reconcile our aspirations with the reality of our limitations. Without risking your actual sanity, you can experience a digital approximation in the indie game Fear and Hunger. This game plunges players into a grim, merciless world where survival feels like a cruel joke and hope is a fleeting illusion. Much like Nietzsche's Abyss, Fear and Hunger challenges you to face despair head-on, stripping away any illusions of control or comfort. You'll find yourself grappling with impossible choices, a suffocating sense of dread, and quite possibly the thought, why am I even playing this? But isn't that the point? The abyss doesn't exist to make you comfortable. It exists to make you question, to break you down so that you can, maybe, just maybe, emerge stronger. Or, give up and uninstall the game in frustration. Your choice. In the modern world, the abyss takes on new forms. The rapid pace of change, the erosion of traditional structures, and the constant barrage of information challenge our ability to find stability and purpose. Social media, for example, creates a digital abyss, reflecting and amplifying our insecurities while offering an endless stream of distractions. To navigate these modern abysses, we must draw on the courage and resilience that Nietzsche championed. The psychology of the abyss is not about avoiding discomfort, but about embracing it as a path to growth and self-discovery. At the heart of Nietzsche's vision for overcoming nihilism is the will to power. This concept is often misunderstood as a crude desire for dominance, but Nietzsche's interpretation is far more nuanced. The will to power is the drive to grow, to overcome obstacles, and to assert one's creative energy in the face of adversity. Think of it this way. While nihilism whispers, "Why bother?" the will to power shouts back, "Because I can." It's the force that propels us to confront the abyss, not with despair, but with determination. For the Overman, the will to power is not about controlling others or amassing wealth. It's about mastering oneself and transforming life's chaos into something meaningful. Every challenge becomes an opportunity for growth. Every failure, a stepping stone to self-overcoming. If you thought Nietzsche's abyss was unsettling, wait until you meet his next big idea, eternal recurrence. Imagine this: every single moment of your life, every triumph, every failure, every awkward silence during a Zoom meeting will repeat infinitely. Yes, you heard that right. Nietzsche suggests that the universe, in all its chaotic glory, loops endlessly, replaying every detail of existence over and over again. Now, before you start panicking about reliving that one cringeworthy high school moment for eternity, let's unpack this. Eternal recurrence isn't just some metaphysical horror story. For Nietzsche, it's the ultimate test of your ability to affirm life. Eternal recurrence challenges you to confront your life with brutal honesty. Nietzsche asks, if you had to live this exact life, with all its pain and joy, forever, would you embrace it? If the answer is no, well, Nietzsche would probably say, you've got some work to do. The idea isn't about achieving perfection, but about finding the strength to affirm life exactly as it is, with all its messiness and unpredictability. Think of eternal recurrence as Nietzsche's existential pop quiz. It forces you to evaluate your values and actions. Are you living authentically? Are you embracing life's chaos, or are you running from it? If the thought of repeating your life fills you with dread, it might be time to rethink how you're living. The eternal recurrence ties directly into Nietzsche's broader philosophy of life affirmation. He wasn't interested in escapism or utopian fantasies. For Nietzsche, The key to overcoming the abyss is learning to dance with chaos. Yes, life is unpredictable, painful, and often absurd, but that's exactly what makes it worth living. Nietzsche believed that true strength lies in embracing life's hardships, not as obstacles to overcome, but as essential parts of the human experience. This isn't about naive optimism or pretending everything is fine. It's about looking at life's chaos and saying, this too is beautiful. The eternal recurrence forces us to find beauty in every moment, to live in a way that we would willingly repeat forever. Let's face it, the idea of eternal recurrence feels particularly relevant in today's world. Between the endless cycles of bad news, the monotony of daily routines, and the constant pressure to project a perfect life on social media, it's easy to feel like we're stuck in a never-ending loop. But Nietzsche's challenge isn't about breaking the cycle. It's about transforming our relationship with it. The abyss of modern life, whether it's existential dread, burnout, or the existential black hole of a Netflix autoplay feature, is an opportunity to reassess what truly matters. Are you living in alignment with your values? Or are you merely going through the motions? The eternal recurrence doesn't just ask us to endure life. It asks us to love it, flaws and all. If eternal recurrence is the test, then the will to power is the answer key. The will to power, as we've seen, is Nietzsche's driving force behind growth and creativity. It's what allows us to confront the abyss, affirm life, and transform despair into meaning. Under the lens of eternal recurrence, the will to power takes on a new dimension. It's not just about creating values or overcoming obstacles. It's about living with such intensity and authenticity that you would gladly relive every moment of your existence. Think about that for a second. Imagine living so fully, so boldly, that the thought of eternal recurrence feels like a gift, not a curse. That's the level of life affirmation Nietzsche is aiming for. Of course, Nietzsche wasn't all grim proclamations and philosophical heavy lifting. Well, okay, mostly he was. But there's an undercurrent of humor in his work, a recognition that life's absurdity is part of its charm. Eternal recurrence might sound terrifying at first glance, but it's also a reminder not to take life too seriously. If everything you do is going to repeat forever, you might as well enjoy the ride. Laugh at the absurdities, embrace the chaos, and find joy in the small, fleeting moments. In this sense, eternal recurrence is both a challenge and a celebration. It dares you to live authentically, but it also encourages you to savor life's unpredictability. If eternal recurrence and the will to power weren't enough, Nietzsche throws another philosophical curveball into the mix: morality. Or rather, his outright rejection of traditional morality. For Nietzsche, morality wasn't a solid bridge to help us navigate the abyss. It was more like a chain keeping us from ever stepping into it. Western morality, rooted in Christianity and centuries of dogma, offered humanity a neat package of right and wrong, good and evil, and salvation for the compliant. But Nietzsche saw this as a problem. Morality, he argued, was a tool for controlling the masses, stifling individuality, and avoiding the chaos of the abyss. In other words, morality wasn't about truth, it was about comfort. And comfort, Nietzsche believed, was the enemy of growth. To understand Nietzsche's critique of morality, we need to dive into his distinction between master morality and slave morality. Master morality is the morality of the strong, the creators, the ones who affirm life on their own terms. It values qualities like strength, ambition, and creativity. Masters don't need the approval of others to define their values. They create their own. Slave morality, on the other hand, is the morality of the weak, those who feel oppressed by life's challenges and resentful of the strong. It values qualities like humility, obedience, and self-sacrifice, often flipping the master's values on their head. Nietzsche saw Christianity as the ultimate embodiment of slave morality, celebrating suffering and submission while vilifying power and pride. Here's the kicker. Nietzsche wasn't just calling out religion. He was calling out humanity's tendency to cling to moral systems that shield us from the abyss. Slave morality, he argued, was a way of avoiding responsibility, of outsourcing our values to an external authority, instead of confronting the void and creating our own. In Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche pushes us to move beyond binary moral distinctions. Good and evil, he argued, are human constructs, not universal truths. They're tools used by societies to impose order on chaos, but they have no basis in the abyss. By clinging to these constructs, Nietzsche believed we limit ourselves. The abyss demands freedom, the freedom to question, to challenge, and to redefine what it means to live a meaningful life. Traditional morality, with its rigid rules and eternal consequences, is like a safety net that keeps us from taking the plunge. But Nietzsche wasn't advocating for anarchy or moral relativism. He wasn't saying, "Hey, throw out all your values and do whatever you want." Instead, he was challenging us to create values that come from within, values that reflect our individuality and strength rather than societal expectations. This freedom sounds exhilarating, but let's be honest, it's also terrifying. Traditional morality, for all its flaws, provides structure and stability. It gives us a roadmap for navigating life, even if the map is outdated and full of inaccuracies. The abyss, by contrast, offers no roadmap. It demands that we forge our own path, guided only by our will to power and our ability to affirm life. This is why Nietzsche's philosophy isn't for the faint of heart. It requires courage, creativity, and an unflinching willingness to confront uncertainty. But Nietzsche believed this freedom was worth the risk. To live authentically, to create values that resonate with our true selves, is to embrace the chaos of the abyss and transform it into something meaningful. Fast forward to today, and Nietzsche's critique of morality feels more relevant than ever. While overt religious dogma may no longer dominate in many parts of the world, new forms of moral absolutism have emerged. Political ideologies, social norms, and even online cancel culture often serve as modern versions of slave morality, dictating what we should think, say, and do. Social media, in particular, amplifies this phenomenon. The pressure to conform to collective values, to seek validation through likes and shares, is a digital echo of the moral chains Nietzsche railed against. Instead of confronting the abyss, many of us retreat into the safety of societal approval, avoiding the discomfort of questioning our beliefs. But Nietzsche would challenge us to do exactly that, to question, to disrupt, and to create. The abyss isn't something to fear. It's an opportunity to break free from the moral systems that no longer serve us, and to forge new paths in the chaos. Of course, Nietzsche didn't approach morality with a grim seriousness. Well, okay, sometimes he did, but there's an inherent irony in his critique, a recognition that morality's grand claims often crumble under scrutiny. Nietzsche wasn't just a philosopher. He was also a bit of a provocateur, poking holes in humanity's most cherished beliefs with a sardonic smirk. Think of his critique of morality as an invitation to laugh at our own contradictions. We cling to systems of right and wrong, yet we're constantly bending the rules to suit our own needs. We claim to value freedom, yet we submit to moral systems that stifle it. Nietzsche's Abyss asks us to see these contradictions for what they are and to embrace the absurdity of it all. Nietzsche's critique of morality isn't a rejection of values, but a call to action. He challenges us to move beyond inherited beliefs and create our own, to step into the abyss and confront the freedom it offers. Yes, it's a daunting task, but it's also liberating. The abyss, with its chaos and uncertainty, is a canvas on which we can paint the values that truly matter to us. By breaking free from the chains of traditional morality, we become creators, shaping our lives in the image of our deepest truths. So the next time you feel the pull of existential dread or the monotony of a life on repeat, remember Nietzsche's challenge. Would you embrace your life exactly as it is for eternity? If the answer is no, perhaps it's time to create a life worth repeating. And if that sounds daunting, don't worry. The abyss will always be there, waiting for you to take the leap. Friedrich Nietzsche provokes us with unsettling questions. What if our understanding of good and evil is not eternal or universal? What if morality, far from being an unshakable truth, is a construct shaped by history and power struggles? These questions do more than challenge religious or philosophical norms. They force us to examine our deepest assumptions about right and wrong. Nietzsche wasn't interested in merely rejecting morality, but in exposing its origins and purpose. Who benefits from moral systems? How do they shape our lives? In this exploration, we'll delve into Nietzsche's key ideas: ressentiment, the will to power, and the moralities of masters and slaves, and reflect on how they reshape the very foundations of good and evil. Nietzsche argued that morality is not universal or divinely revealed, but a human invention shaped by the dynamics of power. Throughout history, morality emerged from the interplay between the powerful and the powerless, giving rise to two distinct moral frameworks: master morality and slave morality. Master morality originates among those who hold power. For the masters, good reflects qualities that affirm life: strength, vitality, ambition, and creativity. Evil, in their framework, is not a central concern. It is simply the absence of these life-affirming traits. This morality celebrates individuality and self-confidence, drawing its values from the master's own experiences. In contrast, slave morality arises from the oppressed, who react against the values of their rulers. Lacking power, they redefine good and evil in opposition to the master's framework. Strength and ambition, celebrated by the masters, are condemned as evil, while traits like humility, obedience, and meekness are elevated as virtues. Nietzsche described this as a moral inversion, where weakness is recast as moral superiority. This shift from affirmation to reaction marked a significant transformation in human morality. While master morality affirmed life and its challenges, slave morality sought to suppress the power of others to justify its own condition. Nietzsche saw this inversion not as a triumph of justice, but as a coping mechanism born of frustration. Slave morality fundamentally altered the way individuals and societies relate to ambition, strength, and creativity. By framing these qualities as vices, it fostered a culture that prioritizes conformity over innovation and mediocrity over greatness. Nietzsche viewed this as a profound loss for human potential. In societies dominated by slave morality, individuals are discouraged from striving for greatness. Ambition is often met with suspicion, and those who achieve extraordinary things are frequently judged as selfish or oppressive. Meanwhile, values like humility and self-sacrifice are idealized, even when they hinder personal growth or societal progress. This suppression creates a psychological conflict. The natural drive to assert oneself, the will to power, is restrained by moral injunctions that equate ambition with immorality. This inner tension leaves individuals frustrated and disconnected from their potential, stifling their capacity for self-overcoming. Nietzsche warned that this dynamic affects not only individuals, but entire cultures. A society that vilifies strength becomes unable to nurture greatness. Figures like Napoleon, who embodied ambition and creativity, are often vilified precisely because they challenge the comfort of mediocrity. To Nietzsche, such individuals represented the will to power in action, a daring attempt to transcend limitations and reshape the world. Yet their greatness is often feared and condemned by societies that prioritize safety over progress. Resentment lies at the heart of slave morality. Unlike fleeting resentment, ressentiment is a deep-seated bitterness that arises from powerlessness. Those consumed by ressentiment internalize their frustrations and transform them into moral condemnation, redefining the values of their oppressors as vices. This process is not only reactive, but profoundly creative. Through ressentiment, the powerless elevate their own condition by reframing strength as cruelty, ambition as greed, and power as oppression. Conversely, they rebrand humility, obedience, and passivity as virtues. Nietzsche argued that this inversion doesn't elevate humanity. Instead, it creates a moral system that restrains both the strong and the weak, limiting the potential for growth. The dynamics of ressentiment are illustrated in the relationship between Salieri and Mozart, as depicted in Amadeus. Salieri, envious of Mozart's genius, cannot match his brilliance. Instead of striving for his own greatness, he reframes Mozart's success as undeserved and excessive, channeling his frustration into sabotage. For Nietzsche, this is the essence of ressentiment, condemning the qualities one secretly admires but cannot attain. Slave morality institutionalizes this dynamic. It doesn't celebrate greatness. It enforces a framework that discourages ambition and creativity. Nietzsche's critique isn't confined to history. It's a challenge to the present, where envy often masquerades as moral outrage, and mediocrity is protected at the expense of excellence. For Nietzsche, the will to power is the driving force behind all life. It is not a desire for domination over others, but an innate impulse to grow, create, and overcome obstacles. This concept stands in stark contrast to the reactive morality of the weak, which defines values in opposition to power and seeks to restrain it. The will to power is not about seeking external validation or control. It is about self-affirmation. It manifests in countless ways. In the artist creating beauty, in the scientist pushing the boundaries of knowledge, and in the individual striving to overcome personal limitations. Nietzsche saw this drive as the essence of life itself, the force that fuels progress and transformation. This perspective reframes the concept of struggle. While traditional morality often views conflict as something to be avoided, Nietzsche saw it as essential to growth. Struggle is not an obstacle to be feared, but a catalyst for self-overcoming. Through resistance and adversity, individuals develop their strength, refine their character, and achieve greatness. The will to power, however, is not a prescription for selfishness or cruelty. Nietzsche did not advocate for the unchecked pursuit of power at the expense of others. Instead, he envisioned a world where individuals embrace their creative potential and take responsibility for shaping their own lives. This requires rejecting the reactive values of slave morality and cultivating an ethos that affirms life in all its complexity. This idea has profound implications for how we view morality. Instead of asking whether a value is good or evil, Nietzsche invites us to consider whether it affirms or denies life. Does it enhance our potential or does it restrain it? Does it reflect the fullness of human experience or does it diminish it? For Nietzsche, struggle is not merely a condition of life. It is its essence. Growth, creativity, and transformation occur not in the absence of challenges, but because of them. Conflict, resistance, and adversity are the crucibles in which strength is forged and potential is realized. Slave morality, however, seeks to suppress struggle by promoting values that avoid confrontation and risk. Humility, obedience, and self-denial, while often celebrated, can encourage passivity and discourage individuals from striving to overcome their limitations. Nietzsche argued that this avoidance of struggle leads to stagnation, both individually and collectively. In contrast, the will to power embraces struggle as a necessary part of life. It views adversity not as a barrier, but as an opportunity to grow stronger and more resilient. This perspective is exemplified in the concept of self-overcoming, a central theme in Nietzsche's philosophy. To live fully, one must constantly challenge oneself, confront fears, and push beyond comfort zones. This idea applies not only to individuals, but also to societies. Cultures that shy away from conflict and prioritize comfort over ambition risk becoming stagnant. Without the creative tension that arises from competition and struggle, progress slows, and the potential for greatness diminishes. Nietzsche saw this tendency as one of the greatest dangers of a morality rooted in resentment. The connection between struggle and growth is perhaps best illustrated in artistic and intellectual endeavors. The most profound works of art and the most groundbreaking scientific discoveries often emerge from periods of intense difficulty and challenge. These achievements are not born out of comfort, but from the determination to overcome obstacles and create something extraordinary. Central to Nietzsche's philosophy is the concept of amor fati, or the love of fate. Unlike resignation, which passively accepts life's challenges, amor fati actively embraces them. It is a mindset that affirms life in its entirety, its joys, struggles, triumphs, and tragedies. For Nietzsche, this perspective is essential to overcoming the limitations of reactive morality. Amor fati transforms the way we view hardship. Instead of seeing suffering as a sign of failure or injustice, it becomes an integral part of life's dynamism. Challenges and difficulties are not obstacles to be avoided, but opportunities to grow stronger and wiser. This outlook aligns closely with the will to power, as both emphasize the importance of affirming life's complexity rather than denying it. By embracing amor fati, individuals free themselves from the bitterness of resentment. They no longer frame their struggles as evidence of life's unfairness or as reasons to condemn power and ambition. Instead, they see these struggles as necessary and meaningful parts of existence. This perspective allows for a deeper connection to life and a greater capacity for creativity and self-expression. Nietzsche saw amor fati as the ultimate antidote to the reactive tendencies of slave morality. While slave morality views suffering as a reason to reject or redefine values, amor fati accepts suffering as a natural and essential aspect of life. This acceptance doesn't lead to passivity, but to a more profound engagement with existence. In practice, amor fati demands courage and resilience. It requires individuals to confront life honestly, without seeking comfort in illusions or blame. This honesty, Nietzsche believed, is the foundation of a life-affirming morality, one that transcends the binaries of good and evil and embraces the fullness of human experience. Nietzsche's call to move beyond good and evil is a challenge to the moral frameworks that have dominated human history. For him, good and evil are not eternal absolutes, but constructs that reflect the power dynamics and priorities of those who created them. To truly affirm life, Nietzsche argued, we must question these inherited categories and create values that align with the realities of existence. Traditional morality often divides the world into binary opposites: good versus evil, right versus wrong, strength versus weakness. Nietzsche believed this dualistic approach was a product of resentment and a tool for maintaining the status quo. Instead of promoting growth and transformation, it restricts human potential by forcing individuals into rigid moral roles. To move beyond good and evil is not to reject morality altogether, but to reimagine it. Nietzsche envisioned a morality that is dynamic and life-affirming, one that celebrates creativity, strength, and self-overcoming. Such a morality does not seek to suppress natural impulses or deny the complexities of existence. Instead, it embraces them, using them as a foundation for growth. This revaluation of values requires a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. It demands that we let go of comforting illusions and examine the origins and effects of the values we hold dear. Are they truly serving humanity's potential, or are they limiting it? Are they grounded in a genuine affirmation of life, or are they reactive and suppressive? Nietzsche's concept of the revaluation of values is central to his philosophy. He believed that the values inherited from traditional morality no longer serve the needs of a flourishing humanity. These values, shaped by resentment and reactive morality, have become obstacles to growth and creativity. The process of revaluating values begins with a critical examination of their origins. Nietzsche argued that many of the virtues celebrated by traditional morality, humility, self-denial, and obedience, were not chosen freely, but imposed by those seeking to restrain power and ambition. By understanding how these values were created, we can begin to question their relevance and effectiveness. Revaluation is not about adopting new values arbitrarily. It is about creating values that affirm life and reflect the realities of human nature. Nietzsche believed that this process requires individuals to take responsibility for their own moral framework. Instead of relying on inherited norms, we must actively shape the principles that guide our lives. This approach to morality is not prescriptive. It doesn't tell us what to believe or how to act. Instead, it invites us to engage with life as a creative process. Each individual becomes a philosopher, crafting their own values through reflection, experimentation, and self-overcoming. The revaluation of values is an ongoing journey, not a final destination. Nietzsche did not offer a definitive moral system. He offered a challenge. The task is to confront the limitations of traditional morality and to imagine new possibilities for living authentically and affirmatively. Good and evil, far from being fixed truths, are open questions. What values will you create to affirm and transform your life? Nietzsche's challenge is clear. Move beyond reactive morality, embrace the will to power, and craft a life that reflects your highest aspirations. Let this journey continue. Together we can explore the complexities of morality, meaning, and the potential of human existence.